请收看《用易利人天》。
紧守到，为同学来建好，大家学业经，做人处事可安心，做人处事可安心，大家学业经，身体健康心安宁，身体健康心安宁，大家学业经，做事工作可顺心，做事工作可顺心，大家学业经。
And then the third challenge is that there are just many types of faith, many types of people, and all of them are experiencing these meanings in different ways, picking up on different things, and then actually in some ways contributing back to the religion and creating it in new ways. And so my general thought here is, there are many meanings at any one moment for many people, but also then those many people create many more meanings, and that's kind of the development of religion. If you could map out religion, you could sort of see historically it's like a bunch of flows, and they flow together and flow apart sometimes. And religion is in a sense then creating or providing rules and roles and a universe of meaning for individuals, and those individuals then create, recreate, negotiate, and change the religion over and over again. And so if you just mapped all these out, and then us as souls come into this world, we're actually navigating multiple cultural flows and religious flows and transforming those flows at the same time. So there's some really wonderful work in the last 20 to 30 years especially, and some of this is sort of starting to get mapped out. Some of this will have to be revised over time as we learn more. But in general, you can kind of see, we're going to try to track kind of where some of these ideas for Cao Dai come from. And we're going to jump right into the Ming Dynasty is where we're going to start, because this is the first place that I find that 96 billion souls that have been lost. So this is Luo. Some of you might have heard of Luo. This is at age 5. By age 5, he had lost his parents, and he spent most of his life feeling a bit lost and homeless. And he was born into a family of soldiers, and so when he was 28, he was a soldier, and he said, "This stinking bag of skin that has given birth to us by one's parents is an accumulation of pus and blood. But the soul, where does it come from? Who gave birth to it? The thought came to me that I have no refuge, and my heart was full of distress. Why is it this soul of mine has no home place?" And so he leaves being a soldier, and he strikes out to find enlightenment or find home in some way. He becomes a Taoist for a while and grows discouraged with that. He tries Pure Land Buddhism, and he would sing out to Amitabha Buddha. He said, "I single-mindedly recite the name of the Amitabha, thinking that if I say it too slowly, my Wu Sheng Fu Mu in heaven will not hear me. My parents, my heavenly parents, so to speak, will not hear me." And then he sits down to meditate one day, and Richard Scheck has this great moment where he says, "All of a sudden, during my meditation, I experienced great joy in my heart, not belonging to being and not belonging to non-being. I am true emptiness. The mother is me, and I am her. There's originally no distinction. With emptiness within and without, I am true emptiness." So he's now enlightened at age 40, and now he has to, of course, just like anybody who becomes enlightened, has to describe this ineffable, beyond words experience to people. And he uses this same language that he'd used in his own life about sort of reconnecting with mother and the homeland. And so he says, "Wuji gives birth to heaven and earth. The people of earth are poor children, admonished to return home, but lack faith. Wuji is thinking of her descendants. With faith, the poor people can return home. There will be boundless joy. The great emptiness embraces everything. Originally, there is no duality. Children of one mother, stop making distinctions, and together you will escape destruction. So this is a kind of very abstract philosophical idea of nothingness, but metaphorically connected to the mother. And as Richard Scheck says, indeed, the emotive image of a divine mother who tearfully awaits the return of her estranged and suffering children is so appealing that it did not take long for some sectarians inspired by Luo Qing to propose it. And so we see, oh, my PowerPoint got messed up there a little bit, sorry. We see then that by 1523, my PowerPoint is, I think there's, hopefully it'll be okay. Oh, no, don't, yeah, just let it go. Yeah, that should be actually an image of Wuji, just like an empty circle, but that empty circle again gets replaced by the mother. And there gets to be these words popping up like Wu Ji Mu in these sectarian traditions, the infinite mother, or Wu Sheng Lao Mu, the thusness mother, so to speak. And so there's a precious scroll dated 1523, which is while Luo was still alive, which has some of these ideas. It opens in the land of the goddess, Wu Ji Mu. It's entering the third kalpa, so this idea of the three kalpas is there, ruled by Maitreya. Amitabha is sent to save 96 billion souls, and he's sent with a 10-step method of cultivation, which is actually a 9-step method with the 10th being nothingness, and that becomes important later as well. So Luoism now pops onto our map here. And then in 1654, you get the full flowering of this idea and the whole story in the Dragonflower Sutra. And I'll just quickly go through the Dragonflower Sutra. Basically, in this one, you get a Wu Ji and a Wu Sheng. Wu Ji gets affiliated with God, and Wu Sheng gets associated with the mother. And they then work with Fuxi and Nuwa to create the first human beings. And I apologize, I made a giant PowerPoint and I think it overwhelmed that computer. So there are a few mistakes, but they're not in the original PowerPoint. There's just something that went a little haywire, but it's okay. Some of the labels will be mixed up. So the 96 billion souls come to Earth, and originally they have these halos. I just want to mention real quick, if you're wondering about these illustrations, what I did to create these, I often just took some of the Chinese text from these scriptures, and I would put it in ChatGPT 4, and then it would create an image for it. And then I would like massage it a little bit to create some of these things here. So originally everyone was a wandering saint, and each seeing the Wu Sheng parents, and they could travel to the east and to the west, like literally the east being earth and the west being heaven. And this halo covered their body, but then they lose that halo. And this is like our original home here. You can see it's by a 7-treasure pond with 8 virtues waters. That's important elements that'll pop up later as well. Right, so this has now the 3-stage eschatology, the Dragonflower Assembly, and the Buddhist elements are sort of mapped onto Taoist elements here. And then the teacher Amitabha presents to the ancient Buddha a chart of the eon. He unfolds it for the ancient Buddha to see with the mysterious text written on it. And the verse says, the Eon Sutra, 3 Buddhas passing, another cycle begins, ending the 108,000 years. All sorts of suffering arrive. So there's a big calamity coming. So that's when she meets Gongchang and sends him to the east, to Earth, to save people. And so they're watching him, and they observe him in the eastern land, sitting upright on the meditation bed, casting off worldly concerns, purifying his heart. And they call him back to heaven. And there's this great conversation in the sutra in which they say, what practice have you been doing down there? And he says, oh, I followed the Buddha's practice, receiving the 3 refuges and the 5 precepts, awakening the karmic spirits, guarding the doors, focusing on the needle. And they say, that's just sitting idly. How long did you do that? And then she goes on to say, now I'll pass on to you a rare dharma, gathering purity, exchanging impurity, ascending, descending, open the gates, and reveal the orifices, break apart and release the split body, retrieve it, see Wu Sheng, transcend Buddhas and ancestors, perpetuate eternal life. Mother passes you 10 practices to save sentient beings. So these are like 9 steps and then returning home again, like into nothingness. There's also a mention of 9 grades of heaven, which becomes important in Cao Dai. And then there's a large dragon boat that's sent to save people and bring them back to the dragon flower assembly. All of this is essential to Cao Dai cosmology, and it's appearing in 1654. And if you then map all this out, you can see additions of Confucianism, French Catholicism, as well as Spiritism and Theosophy. All of that combines into Cao Dai. Now, within Cao Dai, what you see is that, like I said, there's no like direct scripture for any of this, but there is a sermon from 1935 called Explanation of the Dragon Boat. And in that sermon, all of these elements are brought up. Here you can see the time of chaos, heaven and earth had divided, and Kim Mo Du Tree, this is the mother goddess, also called Lao Mo. And she then creates the 100 million original souls, is what it says here. And then you can see there's a mention of the first dragonflower assembly, or the dragonflower assembly, and bringing the boat to bring the souls to the world. And then you can see it references, it says, as stated in the first and second volumes of the Naklo Kimban. So I had to figure out what that is. So I went searching for that text and I found it. And there's actually a predecessor to that in Chinese from 1881. And so this is a really beautiful, beautiful text, which is essentially written by the Golden Mother Goddess. And she's crying for her children who are lost on earth, and her tears become the words. And it's just such a gorgeous text. And this, of course, is being received through spirit writing. And so this is a Zhen Chen Dao master who is receiving it. And one of the studies of this suggests that after 40 years, his cultivation in the Taoist alchemy had reached a considerable level. So the author believes that the primary purpose of the clergyman Mao in writing Jade Du Golden Plate was to expound on his decades of cultivation experience. And so this is the first time we see this name, Yao Qi Jin Mu, which is the name that most Cao Dai use, Du Tri Kim Mo. And this also connects then with the Queen Western Mother of Heaven, and then some of the imagery that comes out of things like the Monkey King, which is really important in Cao Dai as well. They always feature the Monkey King in parades and things like that. So we have kind of the full imagery emerging now, and the golden, you can see this is her preface. All of this is just so beautiful. It's worth reading if you're interested. But the basic story, again, is that same kind of story where she creates the 96 billion souls. She then creates a little string bag, a little treasure bag, and puts 8 treasures in it. And those treasures are Confucian virtues. And those virtues are necessary to travel to and from heaven. And this is a really, really interesting part of my research because now we're actually talking about the same mother goddess of the Cao Dai. So I was able to then message my Cao Dai friends and send them pictures of what ChatGPT was giving me and saying, hey, is this how you imagine this? Does this look right? And then they would give me feedback and we could go back and forth, and we just did iteration after iteration after iteration until we finally came up with something that looked kind of like what they imagined. So this was a very long process, but also really fun and interesting. And so in this story, everybody gets a little treasure bag at the peach banquet before heading to Earth. And in the Chinese version, basically the people are like, their souls are like little pieces of rice that are poured down to Earth. But in the sermon from 1935, they are brought by boat. And then at first, things are pretty rough. They live in a very primitive state, and the Mother Goddess is sad to see this. So she sends saints and other people to teach them more sort of civilized ways, you might say. But then this is in the Chinese version. This figure Guluan Sedan. This is actually Satan. And the Zhenqiandao priest who originally wrote this through spirit writing had encountered a sermon about Satan and had worked it into the myth here, you might say. So it's pretty interesting to see Satan showing up here. But Satan controls the 5 elements, and he tells the 5 elements to mess with people. And so what happens is that metal becomes money, and people lose faith and loyalty to their gems. Then wood becomes beauty, and people lose propriety and care. Then water becomes alcohol, and people lose morality and learning. And all the while, they're losing their gems. Fire then becomes anger, and they lose family and integrity. And finally, earth becomes addiction, and they lose the bag altogether. So now they're lost on earth, and the mother goddess sends dragon boats to save people. First, Fuxi and other ancient sages come, and then Jesus and Sakyamuni and Lao Tzu and Confucius, and now a third boat is coming, and this is the Caodai. So this imagery plays out in some Caodai videos as well. This is from Caodai TV. Oh.
Ai cái vui mừng nhập mẫu thai, vì bất bửu nan mê nghiệt hải, làm sao tính đặng trở hồi lai.
And you can see some of the challenge again in translating this is that if you heard that, that obviously, rhymed and had some resonance there. So you could then play with that a little bit and think of other, is it worth like changing the English meaning a little bit to maintain that rhythm and rhyme is one question that we could ask. So I'm just going to scoot past that one. So you can see here that the Zhenqiandao tradition sticks very close to the Taoist, and you can see the main ideas here is this sort of 9 steps, ending with the 10th, uniting with nothingness. But while Hofap and the Caodai have this idea is present, this idea of sort of cultivating Qi to transform and ultimately unite into nothingness, most of that has been picked up by other branches, especially the Chu Min branch of Caodai, whereas the Teinin branch, which is where I study, has a different way of framing this 9-step process, and it's really captured mostly in this really beautiful and fantastic imagery of the 9 grades of heaven, which the reference for this are some prayers and this chart that will show up at any Caodai temple, as well as some sermons by Hofap. And you can see that these like drawings that you can see of what happens to the spirit after it dies are actually acted out in real life. So here he is actually cutting this 7 strands of karma that hold us to earth after we die. So that frees the soul. And then he's drawing the soul out, and then they will put the soul on a dragon boat and take the dragon boat out to the cemetery. So here you can see the soul actually getting, the body getting on the dragon boat, but in the spirit world, the soul is doing the same thing. And then it's traveling through these layers of heaven, and every 9 days, the Caodai meet to sing, in a way, to chant and sing the soul through the layers of heaven. And those chants and prayers give them a constant reminder of what the heaven looks like. And it's just a short video of what it looks like at one of these weekly our every 9 days chants. So I just want to take you quickly through heaven and what it looks like. Some people have to be punished and purified. They go through the fire of samadhi. Then they come to a karma mirror where they see all of their past lives. And here you can see Hofab talking about this. And then they come to a book of no words. And the book opens up and starts to populate with everything in their multiple past lives. And so now your soul is actually becoming very wise and becomes very calm, and you actually get to decide what happens next, whether you reincarnate or if you'll move on. And all the world's religious leaders are there to watch. Hofap talks about this really beautifully.
I believe you have 1 minute.
Yeah, I know.
So you are arrived at the 7th heaven, and
yeah.
journey ends here.
We're getting there. We're going to get to all the way. So in the 8th heaven, it says here Kung Ditbu, which would mean exterminate your treasures. But in fact, my friend went to other temples and found out that was actually just probably a mistranslation from the Chinese, and that it actually means to examine the 8 treasures. And those 8 treasures are that treasure bag we talked about before. And there's a spirit message from the Mother Goddess relating to that. And so then finally, you get to come home. We return to Mother Home. And the Mother Goddess has kept pictures from all of our past lives. And it's like walking through your real mother's home who keeps your old toys and things like that. You get to meet your spirit family. And then one of the most beautiful lines here is that Hofap mentions that when you look up and you see the Mother Goddess, but she will appear exactly as you want her to appear. And he says, this is very mysterious. However, I can assure you one thing, you will see your own mother. When we see her, all our past love returns. It is indescribable. Even those who are hard-hearted will become emotional. So I'm just reminded here of, I'll just scoot ahead to this. So I'm reminded here, just draw this last connection. In one way, this is like a very abstract idea from Luo that we can ascend into nothingness in sort of through thinking our way there. But for most people, that's a hard process. And, Arjuna asked Krishna once, he said, between those who steadfastly love you and those who seek you as the eternal formless reality, who do you prefer? And he says, those who set their hearts on me. He says, both attain me, but worship of the unmanifest is exceedingly difficult for embodied beings. And one of the things that I think is so beautiful about Cao Dai is how they've bring out this emotion of religion and allow us all to communally think about what it is to unite and have that sense of feeling that connection, which feels a bit like enlightenment sometimes. So thank you.
Thank you, and now we move to Korea. We will have a paper about Victory Altar, which is a nice movement who sends people every year to our Chesnur conference, and nobody understands what we are talking about, but the good news is Bernadette is the only one who understands everything, and so finally she will explain what the theology of the Victory Altar is all about.
Yeah. Yeah, I only have. I'm very sorry to be speaking after you, Michael, because I don't have many images. In fact, not at all, because I'm going to talk about Protestantism, which is which is doesn't like iconography too much, or at least didn't used to. Also, I don't know if it is an honor or a punishment to be the last to speak after 3 full days. So I hope to keep you awake for at least 20 minutes. I have revised last night. I shouldn't be doing more than 20 minutes. So the idea came, in fact, thank you, Massimo, for reminding us, last June when our friends from Victory Altar, whom I met thanks to you in Korea a few years ago, came to Vilnius, to Cessna, and had a full session on their beliefs. And indeed, we can't understand what they say because their level of English is really terrible. And it's very complicated. But, you know, I thought, well, I should try to understand because I have their books. And I visited them. So, and I've been trying for quite a few years to understand the heritage of Protestantism in Korea. Why is it so popular? And I was intrigued by the Korean messiahs, who are very special. So this is I have a long paper, and of course I cut it down to 20 minutes. So if you're interested, I can send the full paper later. This is really sketchy today. All right, so my title is K Messiahs, Victory Altar and the Koreanization of Protestantism. So PPT 1 and 2. Okay, the second one. Yeah, this is the general outline. And this is pretty much the only PowerPoint you will see, except afterwards 1 or 2 images. Okay. So Korea, as you probably know, or at least a lot of you here know, has staged 2 of the most intriguing episodes of the expansion of Christianity outside of the West and of its colonies. First in the 18th century with the epochs, or the original event of the first conversions of Korean scholars to Catholicism without local evangelization, and later in the 19th century, the rapid success of Protestant missionaries, thanks to their social actions, etc., and special links to the royal family. Both events made the religion so attractive that in South Korea today, Christianity, with a large Protestant majority, numbers as many believers as Buddhism, that is some 25% of the total population, which is a unique case in Asia, the Philippines, of course, excluded, but that's for different reasons. Even if Protestant groups have somehow adapted or indigenized their discourse, they have, for the most part, retained the doctrines and practices characteristic of their North American ancestors. I'm talking about the Methodists, the Presbyterians, etc. But not so with another major grouping of Korean religions, also deriving from North American Protestantism, but which have transformed it in a most idiosyncratic manner. These groups were founded by religious entrepreneurs who strategically built their movement on the attractivity of Christianity and twisted it almost beyond recognition to fit their fellow citizens' expectations. They first borrowed the biblical narrative in fundamentalist mode, Koreanized it by incorporating it with or into Buddhist and Taoist elements, about which I will not speak because I'm totally unable to do so. But this was in order to assuage profound spiritual, cultural, and political anxieties specific to South Korea, or Koreans at the time. One such group is the important but little studied, except by Massimo Introvigne, a group called Victory Altar, founded in 1981 by Cho Hee-sung. Studying this group will allow us to track the links that unite religions to the social, cultural, and political fabric in which they have been hatched, so to speak. When the founder claims to have received divine inspiration, how is she or he going to formulate it in order to win over potential converts? The message may scare the receiver by accusing him or her of living in a world of perdition and demanding that he or she change his or her faith radically or change society from within. And there are different modes. Another mode of apprehension of the world by the religious leader may, on the contrary, reinforce the contract, the covenant between the individual and his or her society through the sacralization of various of its social, cultural, political features. And I think this is what this particular Korean Messiah has been doing, because his teachings, as you will see, and his self-proclamation as Victor Christ and God shows that he is a universal Messiah, but with a Korean passport, and he demonstrates hereby the incarnation in his own flesh of the divine election of his country and of its people. In order to identify the different stages of such transfer of national ideals into one individual, I will pass over, but I will summarize very quickly the recent history of South Korea and of its staunch nationalism. And then I will present some of his teachings. I've cut quite a lot of things afterwards. So first point, the genesis of Victory Altar teachings, the development of Korean nationalism and Protestantism. So we all know the social and political problems Korea faced in the 19th century with the Donghak rebellion, etc., against Western influence. And much like in many other countries, in particular in the West, in fact, at the time, the Koreans developed at this point a sense of their own unicity that was to grow tremendously under Japanese occupation that, as you know, started in 1905, then turned into a full-fledged colonization from 1910 to 1945. Now, what is most interesting for our purpose here is that during those decades, though it only represented a tiny fraction of the population, barely, not even 1%, newly introduced Protestantism in its evangelical form acted as the major force inspiring and supporting those Koreans who fought against Japanese rule. A fair number of major independentists converted and met regularly with Protestant circles. This religion, Protestantism, was understood as having paved the way in the West for democracy and the independence of nations. So it was viewed as an inspiration and as an ally for the Koreans for what has been called Korean self-reconstruction nationalism. And I take the expression from a very interesting book by Kenneth Wells called New God, New Nation, Protestants and Self-Reconstruction Nationalism in Korea. Now, a new phase of intense nationalism surfaced with the victory of 1945. Then the Korean War broke out, 50, ceasefire 1953, etc. Didn't put an end to the war that is still open, as you all know. South Korean nationalism became synonymous with anti-communism, which has remained a major defining feature of the country. The authoritarian economy, and this is important for Victory Altar, which is a religion against communism. The authoritarian economic policy pursued since the war transformed the country into one of those Asian tigers. And in 2005, South Korea became the 10th world economic power, which is amazing. And this painfully won prosperity boosted national pride that inspired what, and I summarize here, but what we call now the K-wave. You all know about that, so I skip this. But today, this domestically, if you like, this K-wave, of course, comforts the pride of citizens who rightly boast to be the only people of the region to have resisted century-old attempts at permanent takeover by China and or Japan, and to be the only half of the peninsula to have reached such a level of prosperity and freedom when the other half dedicated itself to military expansion at the expense of the well-being of its citizens. And of course, this military build-up maintains the threat of an attack constantly over the South, and in so doing feeds the anti-communism of South Koreans. Second point, Messiah is Korean, slide number 3. Two of the favorite constructs derived, at the end, the other one, derived from the Bible as taught by Protestants missionaries in Korea, Messianism and millenarism. And Victory Altar has enthusiastically integrated both Messianism and millenarism into its cosmology. Now, of course, the concept of Messianism exists also in other traditions. We've seen it with Pure Land Buddhism, which is the major trend of Buddhism in Korea, and through, of course, the figure of Maitreya, the Buddha of the future, who in Victory Altar is synonymous with the figure of Cho, the founder. So he's both the Christian savior and Maitreya. When Messianism was taught in colonized Korea, identification, colonized by Japan, identification with the fate of the Hebrews is said to have been immediate. And decades later, the simile is still in force. The devotees of Victory Holter hold their founder to be the new Moses. That's how they call him also. And it is said that Korean evangelicals today still strongly identify with the biblical Israel. The term Messianism, as you know, can also be applied to the conviction of a people or a nation that it is endowed with a specific mission, possibly a universal one. And the fervent nationalism of South Koreans today can be seen within this frame. The fact that the small country triumphed over colonization and became such a world power can only be due to its being imbued with a unique salvific power. So you have the next one, and the next one, and the next one. I thought I had skipped. Okay, are you sure you got the short one? Go on, go on, go on. Yes, okay. Leave the next one. Yes, okay, that's the one. So at the headquarters of Bucheon, which is the western suburb of Seoul, and this is where the group was founded, we are greeted by a large portrait of Cho, well, you see it here, with the English caption in bold font, "Messiah is Korean." I took the photo. And in much smaller print, the same caption in Hangul. That's for Koreans. So in fact, it's for the whole world to know, Koreans come second. The founder of Victoria Altar was born in 1931. I skip his life. If you want to know everything about his life, you go to read what Massimo wrote on him. He just died in 2004 in jail, the day before he was tried and probably going to be sentenced to death. Massimo loves telling that story, so he wrote about that. Now, since in the monotheistic perspective of Victoria Altar, there cannot be two messiahs, logically, this one Cho had to discard the first one, Jesus, so as to impose himself as the sole valid one. The book, The Science of Immortality, published in 1992, transcribes this teaching in his own voice. He quotes several verses of the gospel to demonstrate what should have been obvious long ago. Jesus was an idiot, an imbecile. And this is particularly visible from Matthew 24, verse 36, when Jesus says that nobody can tell when the end will come, since only the Father knows. But then, how can he be the Son of God if he doesn't even know when the end will come? Oh, well, okay, he did descend from Solomon, but in fact, Jesus was not begotten of the Holy Spirit, because this is biologically impossible. He had a human father, a Roman soldier, who raped Mary. Jesus is consequently a pseudo-Christ, a bastard with a dirty pedigree. I'm quoting, of course. I don't want to go to hell. Even the biblical God is no longer omnipotent because Satan vanquished him 6,000 years ago. You can see fundamentalism creeping here. The only true God could be Korean anyhow, I quote. At last, God has come to Korea and has become the victor. The true God is Victor Christ, for he is the last Adam. Christ who gives life, who is to construct a new heaven and earth. And then you go towards Pure Land, but I skip that. Now, next point, the immortality of neo-humans. This book teaches how any individual can dominate the spirits of darkness and mutate into a neo-human. This is the major point that exhibits the Taoist features of the movement, but I'm not going to go into this. For Cho, immortality will result from a proper understanding of a link to blood, that of our ancestors up to Adam and Eve. And I cannot but quote a passage that I particularly like, and I hope you will love it too. Mankind forms only one body. The law of heredity is that of blood. Therefore, the dog begets a dog, the bull a bull, the monkey a monkey, and the rabbit a rabbit. Similarly, God bears God. As the Bible has it, we have a being from God and are his offspring. Therefore, the human being is God. If there's anyone who insists that the human being is not God, then he's just like the one who insists that the puppy is not a dog. As we have seen above, however, a puppy is a dog because the offspring of a dog is a dog. Similarly, the child of God is God. Therefore, all mankind is God. We humans are not animals. I skip all kind of stuff. So now the genealogy of the chosen nation. Our friend from Korea, Professor Lee Gwing-won, wrote that Koreans are said to take great pride in being a consanguine race. I'm quoting him, and to believe that they form the most tightly knit community in the world. And he goes on, such strong national conscientiousness resulted in fostering a strong sense of the chosen people. What is most interesting is that in order to support his teaching of racial purity, Cho situated the origin of the Korean race in the Bible itself through a pro bono exploitation of the lost tribe mythology, inscribing his scenario within the historical Israel that, as I noted before, evangelical Koreans imagine they have been duplicating in their own national odyssey in South Korea. Koreans, in fact, and I'm telling you, are the authentic biological descendants of the tribe of Dan, the son of Jacob, and this is in Genesis 49. And this tribe is supposed to have left Canaan around the year 1200 before Christ. If it is no longer mentioned in the Bible, that's one of the lost tribes, it's because it fled to the east to escape Satan and protect the real Messiah that he was missionized to bear. So every time they present their religion, as they did again last June, the members of Victoria Altar display the map of their exodus from Canaan to Persia, then north to the Altai regions, Mongolia, and then finally to Korea. The route proves that Koreans derive from a Nordic lineage, not a Chinese one, as some would have it, in order to identify them as just mere offspring of the Chinese. The Koreans' lineage derived from the Altaic family, but originally from the Hebrews. And linguistically, Korean is supposed to be an Altaic language with a lot of resemblance with Hebrew. And the incarnate proof of this linguistic genealogy is the famous figure of Tangun, written either Tangun, Dangun, because it's the same in Korean, whose name clearly identifies him with the Danites, that is the son of Dan. And Tangun is the famous progenitor of Korea, who was precisely exhumed from ancient lore at the turn of the 20th century, at the time of the construction of Korean nationalism, to consolidate the anteriority of the Koreans and replace the Chinese founding hero, Kija, who was revered until then. So the itinerary of the Danite tribe to Korea was divinely ordained to allow for the incarnation of the true Son of God in the most extreme eastern part of Eurasia. And you usually have also a map of Manchuria and Korea, the true land of God. And this is where paradise will soon be open. And I'm almost finished. Now, Cho, divine power at work. So his overwhelming power allows him to protect his people even beyond death, and in doing so to save the rest of mankind as well. He summarized his agenda in 5 great pledges, which are displayed at the entrance also of Victoria Altar's headquarters. And they are also termed the 5 covenants of a prophet like Moses. First one, okay, that's the map of the true land of God. Next. Okay, that's him after death. Is that another one? Okay, well, that's him after death. Go on. Yeah, that's okay. That's the itinerary. You see that they skipped China. They didn't have a GPS at the time, so they took the longest route. Go on. Okay, that's them with a statue of Dangun. And next one. Yes, these are the 5 covenants. And I shall sweep away communism from the surface of this earth. I will prevent typhoon. I will stop rain in the rainy season. I will make Korea to have an abundant harvest annually. I will root out the potential threat of war from Korea forever, etc. Conclusion. The success of Cho Hing-sang, there used to be some 400,000 members, so that's quite a large group. When he died, whereas he had taught immortality, a lot of people left, so it went down to 100,000. We don't know exactly how many now. But they're still around and come to Cessna every year, so there are still some around. But anyways, so his success comes from his capacity to formulate teachings with prophetic values perfectly geared to respond to the expectations of his fellow citizens concerning the most pressing issues in the final decades of the 20th century. Well, now it's a bit different, of course, in Korea, but social and economic problems such as poverty, almost forced labor in factories or in the fields until at least the 1980s, harsh climate, political issues, and the communist threat most strong at the time, of course, of the foundation of the religion during the Cold War in 1981, and that has not abated since. Cho promised his fellow citizens that they could solve these problems by themselves, thanks to rigorous spiritual and moral discipline, what you could call cultivation, I guess, and thanks to his own power that he conveyed to them through the famous dew you saw on the photo. They can behold the earthly paradise that he has been preparing for them they can see this paradise in the prosperity and in the top ranking of their nation, economically and culturally, thanks to the key wave, because now the nation is hailed internationally. Everybody talks, and mainly in Europe, in fact, and in particular in France, about South Korea. We have masses of students studying Koreans, wanting to go to Korea, hundreds, thousands. I published a book to study French, for French beginners who study Korean, and it was a bestseller and has been a bestseller for years. Now, in tight osmosis with those of his country, Cho's messianism and millenarism join those of oppressed or previously colonized peoples throughout the world. Many peoples who were colonized or evangelized by Christians have drawn from the Bible and the stories of the missionaries the good news of the second coming of the Messiah, and they have elaborated syncretic spiritual systems similar to the one promoted by Victory Alta. The script is Christian, but the contents are indigenous. They announce victory over the oppressors, their destruction, their expulsion from the motherland, and the return of the ancestral world, necessarily paradise-like. The originality of Victory Alta and of some other religions of similar syncretic construction in the region lies in the fact that their messianism and millenarism extend beyond the strictly speaking ethnic frame of victory to affirm the infinite superiority of their own nation over the others and to imagine the conquest of the world culturally and spiritually. In order to achieve this, the first stage consists in negating the superiority of Christianity as understood in the West, while at the same time borrowing most of their doctrines from it. The most important step is to demonstrate the imposture of the Christian Jesus, a fake Messiah, to prepare for the second step, the self-proclamation of the founder of the new religion, that he or she is the true universal Messiah. Reverend Moon claimed he was the true Son of God since Jesus had failed his mission, which was to get married and have children. Park Tae-soon of the Olive Tree called Jesus the son of Satan, and Cho, we have talked about him, mocks him as an idiot, a bastard with a dirty pedigree. Clearly, what these Korean messiahs want to prove is that their until now inferior nation is taking its revenge by belittling the God of the foreign powers. At the same time, they retain those features of the Christian belief system that can be of use for them, such as the chosen nation concept, and that of monotheism, because it is instrumental in sustaining their own personal authority.